Hello and welcome to the Results Roundtable podcast. I am here with DJ and producer Andrew Liggett, also known as DJ Sneijder, or Sneijder Music on Instagram and SoundCloud and all the rest of the platforms. Andrew, I'm here to talk today to you about a bit of your background, the journey through your DJ career from start till sort of today, even general life and relationships and how the struggles have been, like managing everything, family, traveling the world, DJing. So yeah, I just want to dive right in. Do you want to give me a brief background of your journey, just from the early days?
Yeah, well, just like a quick sort of, run through then of how I started and stuff as a bedroom DJ, playing turntables in a small shed at the back of my mum and dad's house. Discovered music around 13 years of age, and at that time I didn't even really know I didn't even really know I was going to have a career in music, number one, or I didn't even know at that time I was absorbing all this stuff to later on have a career in music. So yeah, started at a young age, 13. It was more or less a hobby until I got later a wee bit older, and then started going clubbing or whatever, and then just started to realise that I was listening to music in a different way that other people was hearing it. And then I said that I wanted to push myself, and I decided, look, I want to try and play in front of people, have some gigs or whatever. And then quickly realised that it just wasn't that easy at getting breaks, opportunities. Were very hard to come by in them days with no social media, obviously, trying to promote yourself. And then got into production, and that was probably the main thing that catapulted me into where I am now. Created a brand, an artist name, and that was sort of instrumental in me getting picked up by various record labels, DJ agency. And the rest is history, as I say. That in turn led to me bringing a passion for music and turning it into like a career and traveling the world playing music to like-minded people.
Unbelievable. So you talked about those early days and the struggles back with no social media. I think probably most people today don't even remember time without social media. Even the likes of myself, like I'm 33, and because I grew up with it becoming a thing, you're remembering the days when there was none, but you're just so used to it being here because it feels like it's been here forever because it's such a massive part of everybody's life. How did you promote yourself back in the early days? Like, what was the method? Because I know today it's everything's social.
Yeah, well, that's probably why I remember those days so much, because it was so hard to get yourself out there. It was such a struggle, like you say, and I would make my own CDs, and I learned how to use like basic Photoshop, and I would make up my own covers and mix CDs. And my way of promoting myself was always like going to like the Coach and Banbridge and sit there after in the car park and handing out free CDs, and then people, because I knew rightly that people would be going home to after parties and they would be putting them CDs on and they'd be asking who was that and like stuff like that. It was all like word of mouth, and getting people talking about you and having your name on people's lips was the only way you could promote yourself. There's so many DJs back then, so many good, amazing DJs that were just as good, some better than me, and it was like all about luck as well. But also being talented enough that you knew when your opportunity came along that you were going to grab it with both hands and you were going to deliver on the night, because it's one thing getting an opportunity, but it's another like turning up and actually delivering. That's like probably the single most important thing in any career. I've seen so many people get opportunities and just like buckle under the pressure, and you have to be confident enough. And I don't mean it in a cocky way, but you have to believe in yourself to the point where you believe you're the best, like, and
well, bottom line is you're an entertainer, and you have to entertain. So you kind of have to have a sense of self-confidence to be able to get on stage and do that. So like you said, if you're going to buckle under the pressure while it's even anxiousness or something, like something so stupid as that, it can let somebody down on the night. I want to jump back to your early days. You said you started DJing when you're 13 there. But just before we do you remember your first ever gig?
My first ever gig was in the Cellar Bar in Lurgan with Mandy Reid, and it was down the wee back room. No, sorry, hang on. My first ever gig was in Mahry Loughnane Lodge. It was a teenage disco.
Right.
That was my first ever gig, and I think it was maybe 14 at the time, 15. And Barry Murphy, do you know Barry? He's from Portadown originally. He lived around the corner from me, but he was the guy that sort of got me into DJing in a weird way, because he was the first one around our area that sort of had turntables and stuff. And I would walk home from school and I seen him playing the decks and stuff out of his garage, and went over and asked him what it was, and he showed me everything. And that's when I decided that I wanted to try it, and I really loved what he was doing and whatever. I loved music and always had like a passion for music, but I didn't really have anything to channel it towards, if you know what I mean. I kind of liked a wee bit of everything. And then when I seen the turntables and the whole control over the technical aspect of music, I fell in love with that end of it. And then Barry got me my first gig at Loughnane Lodge. I was only like 13, 14 at the time, and I'd only been playing the decks about a year or so. And at that time, it was just like mixing in the back of a shed at my mum's house. Out the back of my mum and dad's house, they had like a wee shed, and I would go home every day.
I remember that shed.
I think you're probably the only one to remember, because a lot of people went into it and came out with no memory.
Just for any viewers or listeners to know, I am friends with Andrew's brother. So we grew up together, and once you turn of age, you start drinking. And that shed that Andrew started DJing in was Mark's like pre-drinking shed. So Mark would have been in with the turntables and DJ, and all the guys would have had a pre-drink. So I remember that shed after you were done with it.
Yeah, and he carried on the legacy a wee bit there. But
he did.
Back in the days, like, when my dad built that shed, it was just for tools and stuff, and I soon emptied it out. And I had a couch and all in it, and like, we would go there before and after gigs. There was times we'd come back and lock the door and just like, sit there all night, and people wouldn't leave at 2:00 on a Sunday. That's the way it was, like, and just by playing music and just sitting around and just chilling and, living our best lives, like, you know what I mean? It was just all innocent back then, and it was kind of like, I used to go to the Coach and Bomb Bridge club, and used to go to the Arena Circus, and I had friends from both sides of the community all over the place used to come back there. And at that time, like, Gavahi Road is a very taboo place to be hanging around in the Troubles, like, so to get people to come back there from different areas of different walks of life was like always a struggle. But we're all mates, and I was never that way inclined. It was all just about the embracing the scene, embracing like forging friendships on the dance floors and stuff like that. So
I find like music does connect people.
Yeah, for sure.
Like any gigs I've been to, whether it's someone with a guitar or whether it's a DJ, but whether it's big or small, everybody's just there having good vibes, and like you really do. Like I said before, you're an entertainer, and everybody's just there having that emotional experience to that track. And like you said too, you hear music different than other people. Yeah. So like I know for a fact, whenever I'm in a crowd, I'm experiencing that music my own way. Whatever.
Well, that's it. Music's very subjective, and it's a very personal thing, because it can help you through grief. It can elevate you. It can motivate you. It can do all those things. It can trigger all those different emotions. And the type of music that you listen to and the artists that you listen to, it's all very subjective. Like, it's all about triggering that emotional response. And that's why, me as a DJ producer, that I have tried to carve out my own sound, but I'm also very respectful of other people's genres and stuff that even, it's not my vibe. But if other people are digging it, then there's nothing wrong with that. If someone's getting something from that, you can't knock that. And like, that's why I would never slate anybody's music or anything like that, because everybody's on their own journey. And like, I suffered a lot of grief myself over the last few years with my dad passing away, and music like really helped me through that bad period. And it's like, that's probably the single most important reason why I've carried on my musical journey, because I don't know, it just affects me in a really weird way, music, more than I can sort of explain. It's like I realised that very early on.
I remember your dad through Mark, and I always remember if we'd have been drinking out in the shade, your dad Terry would have been sitting in the kitchen with a wee glass of red wine, and he would have been listening
ready to go up to the bar.
He would have been listening to the trance tunes or your tunes. And he just would have loved life. Did music connect you and your dad?
It did and didn't, but believe it or not, my dad didn't really start going out until later on in life. Like when he was younger, in his say like 30s, 40s, he wasn't a drinker or anything. Like he never really go out. It was only when Mark started to get to the age where he was going out that my dad, like, because there was such an age gap, I think, between me and my brother, and I was left home, and he was connecting with Mark because Mark was still living at home, and then he started, like, going up to bar 2, whatever, and he started to like sort of live his youthful life at that age, really. And at that time, I suppose, like, I was just coming up as a DJ and producer, and I was starting to like be really successful as a DJ and, you know, make a living from it. And I don't know, me and my dad had like a very weird relationship. We were very similar people. We worked together for years. We never really talked that way, you know, that way, but we always kind of like, everything was a nod, you know, that way. It was kind of like typical Irish father-son relationship. And, you know, I know that he was proud of me with the music, but he would never have said that, but he would have said it to everybody else. But I felt it, if you know what I mean. I could feel it, you know, that way. It was weird. It's just like...
That is the old school, like, Irish dad thing, because, like, even being Mark's friend, I know he was proud of you.
Yeah, I know that,
but he's never said it to you.
He would never ever say it to me. It was just like, look, it's just that generation, do you know what I mean? And it's only now that he's passed away that it used to annoy me, but now that I kind of like realise that that's just how he was, and it was just a generation, and I've kind of accepted it, and kind of like, you know, at that time, I don't know if I was ever waiting for him to tell me that, but you know, it's a weird bond between father and son of that generation, do you know what I mean? But I do get the feeling that he was proud of me, and I know he just didn't say it, but I knew he was, like.
No, he definitely was, like, even, as I said, even just from being Mark's friend, I knew it.
Yeah.
He made no secret of it.
Yeah.
What about, so, like, what, did your dad ever help you with DJing?
No, like, the thing is, right, when I first started out, like, even on my journey in music, and I wanted to buy turntables and started at that young age, there was no one around our area really doing that. Like, there was nobody playing decks, do you know what I mean? Like, it was all... Even the group that I hung around with, they were all grungers, and we were all into like guitars and all the rest. And I used to go down, Sean Douglas and all them boys. Like, I used to run about with all them grungers, and they used to get the keys off the Procol House down beside, off the St Mary's Hall Cinema. Used to be there. They used to get the keys off the priest on a Sunday and go down and practice in the St Mary's Hall. So I used to go down there with them and watch them, and like loved what they were doing, but always knew that it just wasn't. I was meant to be somewhere else, but I really loved that music. That's where I started out, like grunge music and stuff. So it was more or less like taking pieces of different styles of music and banking it in my head for later on to use it, and that's what I've always kind of done. And then you know, later on I kind of veered away from all that, but you know, my parents never really had any musical background. My auntie, funny enough, she sung in the Eurovision for Ireland, so she was like music. So she sung for Ireland. She represented Ireland in the Eurovision. I think it was 1976 or 78, something like that. So around then, so there is music kind of in our family in a way, but never in my sort of circle of a family. There was never any musical history. Or my dad's like, I think he kind of like always wanted to be a drummer, but never was in a band or nothing, because he used to buy a set of drumsticks, play them on the end of the seat, put me on his knee, and I think that's where my love for like a beat comes from. But he was never in a band, and he actually bought a drum kit for Mark, and I secretly think he bought it for himself, because he put it out in the yard and he knew rightly Mark wasn't even interested in it. And one day I drove out, I think I told Mark this story, and I drove out in the work van and I could hear these drums going, and I went in and he was sitting there with headphones on giving it like Dixie on the drums. He didn't know I was even there, and I turned around and I was, I thought you bought them for Mark, and he was like real embarrassed and all. So I think he loved the fact, you know, that he wanted to be this drummer, but he just never it never happened when he was younger, I suppose. So I think kind of my dad might have been a bit musical, but he never, you know, made it apparent, if you know what I mean.
I think it's something with that generation too, because like times are a lot different. Like I suppose times have changed, but they haven't. Like I think back then, even speaking to my own mum and dad, back then was all about family. You know, get your house, get your job, get your job, rear your kids, make sure there's food on the table, make sure the bills are paid, bring the kids, trying to bring the kids on a holiday once a year.
Yeah.
Oh, there's birthdays, Christmas. Speaking of my own parents, who are just like working class parents, like back then was a struggle just to raise a family.
Sure.
And I think that's probably where a lot of people it was hard. Whenever you're worried about food on the table and bills, it's
big families too. Like, you
Yeah.
know, you had maybe like 7, 8 children and families. That
Oh.
was like standard back then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, my family's not my mum and dad's family, but like my mum's family. I think there's like 6 of them, and,
You know,
so I have
yeah.
loads of cousins.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when your priorities are worrying about, you know, putting food on the table and raising kids, your kind of loves and passions and hobbies get set to the side, and you set them to the side for too long, then they kind of fade away. And
Unless you get extremely lucky, like, you know, luck has a big part to play in every career, I suppose, but unless you get like extremely lucky in them days, it would have been a lot harder. You're right there for sure, like bigger
Yeah.
families and all, priorities completely different. And you know, it's a shame because there's probably a lot of really passionate people who from that generation didn't get a chance to bring their passion to fruition, you know, and nurture a career, and could have been something, but just didn't, because of their circumstances and maybe their surroundings or where they were brought up. It just was never going to happen.
I think it's probably one of the best. I think it's probably one of the best things about social media is that it shows you things are popular, or no, not popular. Sorry, show things are possible.
Yeah.
Like back then, if someone wanted to become a DJ, I was like, how? If somebody wanted to become, you know, an artist, how? How do I make money from this? Where now you can see social media and you can see wee Susie from Kent just started drawing their living room, and then all of a sudden she's seen this and she sells online now. So I think social media has definitely opened up that sort of doorway, and I can make even a bit of a side hustle from a passion. Where back then it was probably just everything was unknown, and when it was so unknown and your responsibility was in raising a family and paying the mortgage and paying bills, it was a massive risk. Where now you can see, yes, it's still a risk to follow a passion, but I can see a path through social media. I can see a path through research online, where back then you didn't have those options. At what point did you realize it was working? Like, can you remember that one moment when you thought that this is actually going somewhere, this has got legs, this is going to pay my bills?
It was a strange thing happened to me, actually, how I actually fell into the DJ career, because I worked in construction in my dad's business since it was like, well, 16 or 17. I worked in Y Park, and I can remember like working there for 2 years and absolutely hating every shift, going in on the night shift.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever worked in Y Park, have you?
I worked in it for the weekend shift.
The famous Kiev line is the worst line
That
to
one?
work on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I done that for like a year.
I done weekends, Saturdays and Sundays whenever I was 16 for 2 months, and then got sacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I worked there for 2 years, and I was thinking about music every day, because every night I done night shift, but like the work was just so brain numbing in there. Like it's just like, you know, I'm not disrespecting anybody that works there, because everybody needs a job and all the rest, and everybody has their own path. But for me, that's how I felt in there. You know, I'm only speaking from my personal opinion, and it was just like I hated every minute of it. And then I went into construction with my dad, and things was going great. We were like building loads of houses in Lurgan, and we had 2 massive sites going, and things was going class, and everything was on the rise. And I was just kind of doing the music on the side, clubbing, doing all that. And 2008 came, the big financial crash happened,
Yeah.
and everything just changed. My whole life changed. Like my parents were no longer doing the construction, because the banks, we were in the first time buyers market, I suppose, you know, building those houses that would have been appealable to the first time buyer, younger generation. And, you know, more like affordable housing is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So once the banks stopped lending money in 2010 or 2008, sorry, that whole market just completely was eradicated, and I lost my job basically in the space of a week. And everybody that I knew, all scaffolders, plasters, plumbers, all my mates that were all tradesmen, it was just gone. Like the whole thing just completely crashed. So I was left in a situation where I was thinking to myself, you know, what am I going to do here? You know, I need to start looking for other work. I need to start like thinking about what's going forward, because my wife was basically keeping us at that time for that few months. And I said, look, I'm going to throw everything into music here. And I had like a few quid saved, and I set up a small studio, and I just started waking up every morning, man, and going into that studio, sacrificed like weekends out, and never went out through the door for like over a year. Every day in the studio, learned to make music from like 9 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, and it seriously was that, like, and that's how long I was sitting in that studio. And slowly but surely, chipping away, I could hear the tracks getting better and better and more refined. And it was at this time I was sending them to people for feedback. I knew a lot of people in the industry, friends who were just DJs, and they were just telling me it was great all the time. And I soon realised that was the wrong thing to do, because your mates are never unless you have like a really good, solid, honest mate who's going to tell you like it's not the one, like, you know what I mean? But they're few and far between because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So everybody was telling me the music's class and all, and I sort of, the quality was building up in the back of my head and I knew it wasn't. And around a year into producing, I sent a track to John O'Callaghan. I got his email from a friend of mine who I'd met in MySpace, and John said to me, look, these tracks are amazing. You know, I'm starting my own label. I'm going to be starting my own label in 6 months' time. I'd love you to make like an EP for it. So I was working away at those in the background, those 2 tracks. That was my goal, and my goal was set to like try and get onto his label. But in the meantime, I had another track finished and I sent it to Paul Van Dyk, and I just thought there's no way he's going to sign this track. Like, and he signed it, and I couldn't believe it. And it was like the first track that ever got signed was to his label, which was probably the biggest label in trance at that time. Yeah. And that was like absolutely huge for me because Paul Van Dyk was one of my idols growing up, and I didn't think in a million years that my track, I thought it was good, but I didn't know that anybody else would think it was good enough. And he was buzzing about it, and I actually went on to sign like maybe 4 or 5 tracks, done remixes and all for his label after that.
So obviously that was the moment then. Like
that would have been the moment.
You had John O'Callaghan, who you respected, said he actually liked your tracks, as opposed to, you know, yes men mates trying to big you up and stuff, not hurt your feelings. And then obviously Paul Van Dyk said the same and signed you. But
it was sort of short lived because although yes, I thought, right, yes, I'm moving somewhere here. At that time I thought, right, this is it, I've made it, I'm ready, this is it. Like, but it was so far away from actually making a career in music. It was only like the small first step really. And what I quickly realised is that, you know, you're just entering the social media era then. It was just, everything was just becoming about the brand, the socials. I think MySpace was just dying off, and Facebook was kind of like popping up. Bebo was just going. It was all like that that kind of like era, you know what I mean? So, you know, there would have been no Instagram or anything like that. It was just all about probably Twitter and Facebook. And yeah, it was just like quickly realising that making one track but having the ability to follow it up like a month later with another brilliant track, and I wasn't at that level yet, you know what I mean? So it was about learning to have that speed, and quality was probably the where I was aiming to get to.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by Branded Merch. Do your t-shirts look like they came free with the meal deal? Are you sick of merch and uniforms that look cheap, logos that peel, and tees that shrink after one wash? So are we. At Branded, we make merch that your team will actually want to wear. Whether it's uniforms, event gear, your own brand drops, or community merch, we've got you covered. We use premium blanks, proper printed embroidery, and we're upfront and honest about what works, what doesn't, and most importantly, what looks and feels great. No minimums, quick turnaround, and yeah, we actually care about the end product. If you're listening to this and thinking my team could do with some better threads, visit brandedlimited.co and let's make it happen. That's brandedltd.co. And as a listener to this podcast, first-time customers can get 10% off with code ROUNDTABLE10 at checkout. Hey everyone, just a quick shout out before we jump back in. Andrew Liggett, my guest in this episode, has very kindly given me a signed vinyl record and CD of his brand new album, Bring the Noise. To enter, all you have to do is be subscribed to our YouTube channel and leave a comment under this video about your favourite moment from the episode. That's it, no purchase necessary. At the end of this month, I'll pick a random winner and announce it here on Instagram and ship it to you wherever you are around the world. Good luck, and let's get back to the conversation. What you said that your wife supported you then and you had some money saved up, and your wife also supported you for a year. Do you remember what that's obviously a big financial risk to, you know, any couple. Did you have a kid at the time?
Not at that time.
No, not at that time. No. Well, even still, it's still a big financial risk to take. Do you remember what your first pay was from that first record being signed?
Oh, you wouldn't like.
Did it even cover the year?
Cover the year? Are you joking? Like, if I told you the money that people get from record sales, you would say you wouldn't believe it. You would not believe it. Like, I would say, like, if you make in 1 year off one track, if you made like €500, you'd be lucky.
Oh really?
Yeah, unless you get a big commercial hit.
Yeah.
You know, but like in terms of digital sales, like you have to remember, you know, who actually wants the physical file of music? Like, to go on and buy a tune from Beatport, who actually wants that file? The big DJs get it for free in promo. The normal Joe Blogs who listens to music just streams it on Spotify, who pay like complete buttons. the guy who makes it, myself, has this file, he uploads it to Beatport. So you only have like a very small group of people who are maybe bedroom DJs or people that actually need that physical file of music is where you get your sales from. It's very, very few, you know what I mean? You're like, people think that all these people listening to your music is going to generate all this money. It definitely is not. Like, my bread and butter is definitely from touring, and that's it. Now, in saying that, I've started my own record label and stuff, and I'm making money from that. But in terms of revenue stream, back in them days, it was nothing. Like I was doing remixes for free to get my name out there. I was taking the financial hit. I never got paid for remixes until like maybe, I would say, 2-3 years, maybe 4 years into my career, until I became like in demand. My way of thinking was just remix everything and put it on a record label's plate. I made this version of this tune. They're going to take it. It's free money. They're going to put it out. If it's good, like, you know, of course it has to be good. And, you know, that was my way of thinking of getting your name established, making your name in demand, creating the demand. Don't be waiting around, because nobody's going to give you anything. Nobody's going to knock your door and say this or that. In fact, 90% of the people in the music industry are looking to align with you to take stuff from you. There's very few people there to like help you or elevate you. Everybody wants something from you, whether it's money, clout. They're all after something. And that's why I keep my circle very, very small in this scene. Like,
that's it. It's actually crazy. I didn't think the money from a record would have been that small.
Well, like, in saying that, like the physical copies, like the vinyls, CDs and stuff, which have only, there's been a big resurgence of that, like over the last like 2 or 3 years of vinyl and stuff. But back then, physical copies were non-existent. Nobody was pressing vinyls. CDs were few and far between. You know, Spotify was the main streaming source of music, I suppose. There's no real money in physical sales. Like, of course, if you make like a big anthem, like a tune of the year material thing, you might get like a bit of money, but it's nothing really worth talking about. Like,
so your wife, our partner, had obviously a massive support in your life.
Yeah.
What did she think whenever you'd sacrificed a year of income for £500?
She believed in me from day one. She believed in everything that I was doing, like everything that I said to her.
Yeah.
It's weird because she didn't know, she doesn't understand any of it. Like the names that I was mentioning to her, my wife's Polish and she comes from a completely different background. She's not into dance music at all. And you know, the names that I wouldn't have been mentioning, that I would have been mentioning to her, that I was getting signed to, it meant nothing to her. You know, it's like saying somebody down the street, they mean nothing to her. She was taking my word for everything. She was believing that everything that I was saying was a stepping stone to us, like, changing our lives. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, she believed in me from day one. Like, there's no other way I can put it. Like, the self-belief that she had in me from that day is admirable. Like, you know, it's...
Do you think if she wouldn't have been a part of your life, your success might not have came?
No. I don't. I wouldn't. It wouldn't have been successful. I think that, like, everybody goes home at night and sits in that room, and having someone reassure you, or like, you know, like tell you that you're good enough, and like stuff like that is like that elevation and that adding to your self belief is like instrumental in anybody. I don't think you will meet anybody on a podcast that you do, or talk to anybody that has been successful in music or any sort of venture or business that won't say they've had like some sort of like emotional support from a partner or something like that that's believed in them, or maybe a mentor, or like someone that's driven them on. Someone that's done it on their own is very few and far between. You know, I think everybody needs that wee like it's just like, you know, you just need to believe someone has your back, you know, that way.
No, that's like, it's something that I would talk about a lot, because I kind of experienced it myself. Is I find entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey.
Oh yeah.
Because nobody can really relate to you. Like if I talk to my, like even my girlfriend at the minute, or my mum and dad, like if I talk to them about business struggles or stresses, they sit there and be like, yeah, you know, and you know they love you, they know support you, but they can't relate to you. Like they don't really understand. But and they do their best to try and sort of, you know, give you that wee bit of emotional support you need.
Yeah.
Which, for me as well, is one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast, was just to connect with other people who can genuinely relate. But no, I 100% agree with you about needing that support, because it's a very lonely place, and if you're on your own for long enough, you start to have doubts, and even especially your industry, you need to have the confidence to be able to go on stage and perform and put everything in the track and not second guess it or question it.
Yeah, like exactly what you said. Like, you know, it's a very, you know, it's hard to explain because when you're starting out, right, you're getting a lot of no's from people. Yeah. Like nobody wants to know you. Nobody wants to be. You're an amateur. You think you're amazing, but you're actually not. Like, you know, I can remember making music and you think that piece of music is amazing because you've made it.
Yeah.
But when you're comparing it to the stuff that's successful, it's not that great. Do you know what I mean? But you still think it's amazing because you've made it, and that's something you have to shake when you're like trying to create like quality music. You need to separate that way of thinking and you know, take your wins from who's supporting the music and like stuff like that. Like, you know, if I'm sending a track to Armin van Buuren, for example, and he plays that track, that's a win. Yeah. Not me saying it to win. You know what I mean? Like, and I know it's only a personal opinion. Like, again, a subjective. Like, Armin, you could send Armin a track and he mightn't like it and he mightn't play it, but it still might be good to other people. Yeah. But you have to like reach that mindset where you know that your music's quality and it is quality, and it's kind of like really hard to get to that point. And
because you're emotionally tied to something you've made.
Yeah, you're always emotionally tied to like that piece of music or that product that you've made, thinking it's amazing because you've put X amount of time into it. But nobody cares about that on the outside. Do you know what I mean? They just care about what they look at straight away or what they hear straight away.
Is that a lesson you've had to learn the hard way? Has there ever been a song where you thought this is the one and no one liked it?
Yeah, yes and no. Like, I mean, learning that way of thinking, but also not accepting no for an answer is probably part of the reason why I've got to where I am now, because I'm the sort of person, if someone tells me no, I just don't agree with them. I always find another way. Like, if someone says you can't do this, I will do it, like, no matter what, just to prove them wrong. That's how I am, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like instilled in me, that kind of attitude. And you know, I don't want to call it arrogance, but you know, you have to have that like really strong self-belief, but at the same time you need to be realistic, which is kind of like hard to find that balance, and it's all about finding that.
I think if you're an entrepreneur in any sort of sector, like you're in the music sector, I think you kind of have to have that level of arrogance. And some people might mistake that with being like a bad person, but you can be kind and generous, but in your own field and your own vision, you can be, you know, tunnel mindset and arrogant and self-confidence, and you can be all that by still being a good person. And I think that's something that people sort of mix up sometimes. Like, oh, that you know, that fella's an asshole. You know. Yeah, but he's all in his own head and blah blah blah. But some sectors you have to have it, and even like entrepreneurship, you have to have strong self-belief that even if it's not working, someday it will. Yeah, like, but behind that, the other side of the coin is you don't see the struggles that people's getting to get to that point, and sometimes to let an opportunity go, people are going to do whatever it takes because it's took them that long to get to that point, and it's kind of like tough to, you know, understand someone's journey. Like, I know it's tough, like you see someone and you see it as ignorance or arrogance or whatever, but you need to understand the backstory too. And I think that's kind of like part and parcel about becoming successful in any business, trying to ride that line, whereas you're going to let people know that they can't mess with you, like they can't do you over, but at the same time you're a good person to be aligned with. That's kind of like the key factor here. You want to be striking a point where people think, if I'm with this guy, I'm going to be treated fair, but he's still not going to take any nonsense. Do you know what I mean? It's like that teacher you always liked at school that was harsh but fair, but you always gravitated towards that. You knew that, you know. I actually know a story about you, a teacher. Me? On a teacher, yeah. All right, go ahead. Well, unless Mark's lying, but when you were in school, you were DJing when you were in school? Yeah, well, we would have started. I was a bedroom DJ at the time. Was there a teacher who told you you'll never be a DJ? Yeah. At the TAC. It was actually in Dungannon TAC. It's a funny story because I went, when I left school, I was like really interested in computers, and I stayed on in Druncree and done extra like BTEC and computers, and then I went on to Dungannon TAC to learn computer programming and stuff like that, and I was in class. But I would have been getting the bus to school every day and listening to the DJ mixes and the headphones and dissecting them, and then it kind of like seeped into my class work as well. I would be sitting down the back of the class with the headphones in, listening to the DJ mixes, because I became obsessed with it. And
a teacher caught me at it one time, and he said to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Look, I'm listening to this music, and hopefully I want to become a DJ someday." And he just goes to me, "You're a waster. You have no chance of becoming a DJ." He goes, "Get them earplugs out," and he kept repeating it then all the time.
Yeah.
His name was Mr. Barnes, so if you're listening or anywhere. So yeah, no, that was the story behind that. Yeah, it was a strange one, but I think it was just loose talk, you know, that way. I don't think he really meant it, like, to be honest.
No, I always remember Mark telling me that story.
Yeah.
It always makes me laugh. What about, obviously we talked about it being like a lonely journey, and you talked about touring. So you now have a daughter.
Yeah.
And from what I know, you're starting to tour more and more, and they're getting longer and longer, you know, further away across the planet.
Yeah.
What's that like when you're starting a family and then having to leave?
Really tough, like especially in the early days, like when a baby's small and there's more attention needed, like it's 24/7 with a child when it's like just born and whatever. And you know, again, it all circles back to my wife, how, you know, determined both of us were for me to make it on this journey, and how much self-belief she had in me. And you know, that's why I'm with her, because that's the type of people that I gravitate towards, and how much respect and love that I have for her. So it's kind of like, you know, she was looking after my daughter basically, and I was away at weekends, not all the time, like long haul flights or stuff like that. It was like sometimes England, it was back in a day or whatever. But it was really, really tough, you know, in the beginning. And you know, the fees wouldn't have been amazing. Like back then when you first started, you were on very, very low fees. Like I'll tell people now what fees I would have been on starting out. You'd have been on £150 a gig, £200. That's like really low. Like that's how much money you'd have been making in a week.
And if you had to go to England, was your travel expenses paid?
You know, you have to pay your flights and all that.
You have to pay. So like, those gigs you were making the money.
There was gigs you were making maybe, and then you have an agency to pay percentage out of that if you were signed an agency. Yeah. So there was times you were lifting a statement at the end of the month and it wasn't that big, like, you know, and that's how it was at the start. But again, it's just another stepping stone in the direction. You have to believe that one day you were going to be, you know, changing your life and up there with playing the big events and stuff, which I'm doing now. And thankfully, I never want to say that I've made it, because I never feel like I've made it, but thankfully I'm at a stage now in my life where I'm financially comfortable and I can live like a really good life and I can provide for my family, and that's always where I want to be, like, and that's enough for me, like.
Has there ever been a day where you thought about giving up and going back and getting a normal job? Has there ever been a moment where it's been hard, like really hard? Maybe
for like 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
It usually, it's happened to me a few times, and I'll tell you when the worst was, when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And like, our industry was probably the first to go and the last to come back, because it was all, there were so many things had to be signed off on before we could go back to work. The public gatherings, the flan, country restrictions, everything. There was like so much, like, our industry was hit really hard. There was no financial support. It was really tough. We were just like basically said, you're self-employed, you're a DJ, you know, you're still filing your taxes every year and still paying taxes, but you're not entitled to any money. Just like sit over there until it's time to come back. I think it was like 2.5 years, 3 years, we never played a gig.
That's mad.
I went to Australia, played a gig. It was the only time over COVID, caught COVID on the plane the way over. Yeah, crazy times, but like at that time, I don't know, man, like I just felt like giving up at that time. And then, do you know what I said? The best thing to do here is just to make as much music as possible, so when all this kicks off again, I'll be ready to come out of the blocks. And that's what I've done. And that's when I made that album, that vinyl that I give you. So that was written during the COVID times of like times of self-reflection, of like, you know, thinking about giving up. Where's this all going to go? I don't think it was in any way lack of self-belief. Yeah. I think it was lack of sort of like the situation and where it was going, and you know, being real enough to know this could take like a long time, and also thinking about my family, like saying I have to provide for this family here, you know, when does enough become enough? And it was more that side of things rather than me not wanting to carry on as a person, because that would never happen. I just love music too much. But it was more being a provider, from a provider's point of view, really. That was the self-doubt there.
No, definitely, because I'm sure at the time you said your income, like your main source of income was touring.
Yeah.
You said that it had stopped, so like you're just watching that bank balance go down and down and down, and then you're looking at your wife and your kid and your house and going,
Yeah.
you know, at what point is enough? I think a lot of people were like that at the time. Although I do remember hearing that the entertainment and music industry was the worst hit.
Oh, 100%. There's clubs. I think last year alone, I heard a DJ saying that there was over COVID, between COVID and now, there was like 600 or 700 clubs in the UK have closed. Just couldn't facilitate. Like it just didn't bounce back the same way, and they couldn't keep it up.
Has that affected DJing and touring? Because if there's 600 or 700 clubs have closed, that's 600 or 700 opportunities per night for a DJ to perform.
Yeah, well, like a lot of those clubs wouldn't specifically be like dance music orientated. They could have been like for bands and stuff. Like probably venues is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it took a long while to bounce back. Like not only because, like I said, once they opened the gates of like, okay, you can start going out, you can start touring again, you can start flying. People were skint, so that had that knock-on effect too.
Yeah.
So people going out's a luxury. So people were putting that last on their list of even like, you know, preferences. You know, it used to be back when I was going out, clubs were full every week. There was like 6 or 7 clubs around here alone, like were packed to the teeth every weekend.
Yeah.
It still hasn't bounced back. It's not like that even now. Like, you know, teenagers now, they're not interested in clubs. They're only festivals. They only want to go where they can pay a solid ticket price and see like maybe 20 DJs in one lineup. The club scene is like, has been really affected and is still feeling the ripple effect from COVID for sure.
Even just as someone who goes out like generally, not like I would go see the odd DJ that I do like. A lot of my mates aren't really into DJing, so it's only a select few mates that I can go with.
Yeah.
But even just general going out to bars and stuff, I've noticed it's nowhere near, like, I think back to whenever I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, like them days, and you went out and everywhere was packed. It didn't matter where you went. There was nowhere empty.
For sure.
Where now you're going out and that place is dead. Let's move on to the next one.
Well, even bands, like look at concerts and all. You don't see, like, I can remember like so many bands touring, like Ireland, UK. Were spoiled for choice. Every weekend or every month there was something on, like an event or something. It's few and far between now. Like it's very, very. It's the. I would say, if you ask me what has caused it all, I would say streaming services is like a big part of it, because on TikTok for sure, because TikTok has created like the attention span of teenagers and people in general has like shrunk way down. So it's just like a flick generation. Yeah. Like that's why when you make a track, like I make a track, for example, it's 8 minutes long, DJ friendly track. Yeah. But you have to make a 2-3 minute version for Spotify, because the teenagers are only interested in listening to the melody and then they're on to the next thing.
How do you feel then whenever you make a track and it's 7-8 minutes long and then you know you have to chop that?
It's just how it is, you know. Yeah. I don't like doing it, and it's not what I make music because I like to tell a story and a journey, and you can't tell, especially in trance music, you can't do that in a 2-3 minute track. But you know, labels and putting yourself out there, it's the old age question, is that if you're not in the mix you'll be forgotten about, so you have to do it. And you know, as much as I don't like these current trends and all the rest, it's not for me to decide, you know what I mean? It's the teenagers, they decide what's popular.
Yeah, you can sit and complain about like the world today and the market today, but it doesn't fix your issues about dealing with it. Did you adapt over COVID? Because I remember you done some live streams. Yeah. Had you ever done those before? No,
it was just something like a lot of DJs was doing them. Like it wasn't me that invented them. Like everyone was doing them over COVID, more or less as a means of like keeping your name and your presence probably online, but also it give you an opportunity to play, like dip into your old tunes, that you're a bit more relaxed. You're not in a club environment, you're just like spinning some older stuff, just being a bit nostalgic, but also show your knowledge of dance music. Because like I'm going to a club now and I'm playing like the current tracks and what people expect to hear from me now as a DJ based on what they're listening to me from the Sneijder brand. But my wealth of knowledge of music goes way back, longer than that. Like, you know, since I was 13 to the older days, and I done some like really good nostalgia sort of streams, and people couldn't believe it because they never heard any of the music before, and it was all about educating people. Whereas now you're getting an hour set, you haven't time to educate people. If you start trying to go really underground and trying to be this really underground educating people or DJ, these days, people will go, well, why do you not play your remix of Stay, or why do you not play this, or why do you not play that? They're coming to expect them tracks.
That's probably my favourite song from you, is that remix
You know,
of Stay.
this is the thing. But as a DJ, playing those tracks every week, you soon get sick of them because you feel like you're becoming the same thing. But you also have to understand is that you're not playing the same crowd every week.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding that balance where you can play new material, still play tracks that people will know, but introduce them to new stuff as well. And I think that's probably part and parcel of being a good DJ, and having sort of any longevity in the scene, really.
We talked about confidence and stuff. What is your 5 minutes before you go on stage like, and what was it in the early days compared to now?
Oh man, the early days I was near physically sick.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, it wasn't nerves in terms of like actually standing on the stage. It was more nerves of doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Because back then it was CDJs and you were mixing CDs or vinyl even, and mistakes were easy made because if it was bad monitors in the booth and you couldn't hear properly, you couldn't hear your beat matching properly. It was so easy to make a mistake, but also more enjoyable as a DJ, I would say, because you were like always chasing your tail. Whereas nowadays, I'm cool as a cucumber. Like before I go on, there's no nerves whatsoever at any festival that I play. You maybe get a wee bit anxious if you've maybe playing the likes of a State of Trance, where you know that you've put like a year's worth of prep into a set and you just want it to go well. But there's nowhere. Once you get the first mix out of the way, you're away. You're like fine. And with technology now, the standard of equipment, the standard of stuff in the booths, like when you reach a certain level as a DJ and you're playing those high end festivals and stuff, it's just next level. Like everything's the standard when you step in that booth, you're not going to be let down there at all. Like,
so to me, what I'm hearing there is, it's your repetitions that have done you well.
Yeah.
The early days you were worried about the performance going well, and through repetition of doing it over and over again, now you're getting on the stage fully confident that your performance is going to go well.
Yeah, look, it's like anything, no matter what career you're in, if it's music, playing football, sports, whatever, it comes from experience, doing something all the time and just building that experience. And like, I would also say that your failures are just as important as your steps, because they're the things that you learn from the most. Like the things that I've failed at, or the no's from people, are probably the things that have pushed me for a lot further than the yeses, if you know what I mean. Because the yeses only last for like an hour, that real good feeling, you maybe have a spring in your step for a day. But the no's and you can't do that.
Yeah.
That lasts for weeks, man. And you're like, you're that's in your head, determined, driving you on. So I would say, like, treat failure as motivation is probably the biggest piece of advice that I can take away from me making a career in music, is that use the failures as your fuel.
We talked about the 5 minutes before. What about after a set? Like, do you remember what it was like coming off after that first set, or back in the early days?
Oh man, I wouldn't
and
even
do you still get that same buzz today?
Oh, I still get the same feeling. Like, music triggers an emotive response in me that I can't explain it. It's very like it's an emotional high, and I have never been really a person that will stand in the crowd and dance. I'm a shapeless dancer. There's no interest in it, right? But I enjoy watching people dance, and I enjoy the fact that I can control that and like take people on a journey. Like, being a good DJ is not about turning up, playing the Beatport top 10 or the top 10 tunes on TikTok. That's not a DJ to me. A DJ is someone who can, for example, I'll go to Argentina, I'll play like 5, 6, 7 hour sets, and you're bringing that crowd up and down. You have highs in the sets, you're bringing them down, you're keeping it on a low for a while, and then you're dropping something very euphoric and it just lifts them again. It's about doing that for 5 or 6 hours. That's where the real skill comes in. I've
been in crowds like that, and I know that feeling, and it is amazing. Like, I experience. I love trance music, and I know the feeling. And see, you talked about your tracks are like 7-8 minutes long. Most people don't like that. I actually really do. I love when I get a trance track and I know you're going to spend 2 minutes building me up, and then you're going to level out, and then you're going to hit me again.
It's like You know, I grew up listening to proper DJs, Carl Cox being my favourite DJ, and that guy's went through so many genres of music, but when I first started listening to him, he's a hardcore DJ, and even then, his tune selection, his progression, and like I said, on the bus to school, and sometimes in school in the class that I got told off by the teacher, I was listening to music and I was dissecting it. I was like saying, why when I listen to this mix does it make me feel so good from start to end? Why? What's causing that me to feel like that? Do you know what I mean? And instead of like just listening to it as a piece of music, I was trying to understand the science behind it and like the why it was creating that feeling and why I was feeling like that, and that became instrumental in me understanding sort of the genetics and the makeup of music and how to be a good DJ.
You've touched shoulders, and I'm pretty sure you're now friends with like some of the biggest names in the trance industry. Have you ever talked to them about that? Do you think that that is the main thing that makes all the most successful people in trance or any music industry successful? Do you think like some Armin van Buuren or Paul van Dyk or any of them guys, are they all listening to music the same way you are? Obviously with their own emotional response to it.
100%. Like, I mean, you know, when you're having a conversation with someone, and DJs that I would be in my circle, and A-list DJs now that I'm sort of associating with, big massive names who are like, before I was even like anybody, they were A-listers at that time,
yep,
that I can talk to now. You can still tell, you know, that the reason why they're still around to this day is simply the passion for what they're doing.
Yeah.
They believe in what they're doing right at this time is what they should be doing. They are emotionally invested in it. They're career driven, and all in their own individual way. Like, music's very subjective. He's making that style of music, I'm making this style. Maybe I don't necessarily like it, but I appreciate it. I appreciate what he's doing. It's not my vibe maybe, but I can still hear why it's appealable, and I can still appreciate what like, I don't know, man, like I love all genres of music. I don't think there's anything
wrong
that I've ever heard in any genre of music that I can't appreciate the music. In fact, people find this strange, but hip hop is my most favorite genre of music, and that's what I listen to the most, and that's probably been the single most influential genre of music, even before I started doing dance music, throughout my whole career, that I still listen to now and take influence from.
You never break a few raps out though?
Not so much the rapping. I just like, you know, I've never been so
beats.
much a rapper, but I love the wordplay. It's modern day, not modern day, but like since it started, it's poetry to me, and like how people tell their stories, how the beats are put together, how it all works together as one.
Who's your favourite R&B or rapper?
I don't know, man. I like all the old stuff. You know, I like, you know, all the G-Funk stuff, like, you know, Snoop Dogg and like Dr. Dre and all the more, that sort of sound is more the sound that I like. Eminem's amazing, obviously, and like Naughty by Nature, like all that. You know, anything with a bit of old school flavour to it is what the stuff now, that mumble rap, is just not for me at all. Like, I would only listen to stuff that's influenced, like old school stuff that's really, I don't know, it's near amateur produced, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I think it was harder back in them days to make music sound good, because they had so little to like play with, or like, you know, it was all sampling. It was very like organic and very well put together. So to make something sound good in them days, it had to be good. Like,
yeah,
Jay-Z's early stuff, I suppose I would like too. I'm not fussed on Jay-Z now, but his earlier stuff before he kind of really broke through, I would have liked his stuff.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by These Wild Stories. If you're a newly engaged couple and hate getting your photo taken, then today's sponsor is perfect for you. Ran is a wedding photographer based in Armagh who pretty much specialises in relaxed, candid photography so that your wedding day doesn't feel like a photo shoot. You only have to go to his website to see what I mean. The majority of his work is capturing things that happen in the moment rather than setting up the shot. Ryan's wedding photography page is called These Wild Stories, and if you head over to his website and like his work, he's offering a 10% discount on packages if you get in touch and use the code word results to let him know you came from this podcast. So the website is www.thesewildstories.com, and it's These Wild Stories on Instagram too. Be sure to check that out if you or your friends or family members have just got engaged. Hey everyone, just a quick shout out before we jump back in. Andrew Liggett, my guest in this episode, has very kindly given me a signed vinyl record and CD of his brand new album, Bring the Noise. To enter, all you have to do is be subscribed to our YouTube channel and leave a comment under this video about your favourite moment from the episode. That's it, no purchase necessary. At the end of this month, I'll pick a random winner and announce it here on Instagram and ship it to you wherever you are around the world. Good luck, and let's get back to the conversation. If you were going to give a bit of advice to someone starting off today, I know obviously when you started times were different, there was no social media, so if you want to give advice to an 18-year-old who's starting today in today's world with today's social media and today's methods, can you give a couple of nuggets of advice of how you would become a DJ from nothing?
Easily the easiest advice I could give is like, ignore the TikTok, ignore all that stuff. People, what happen is, what I see now as younger generation, this is happening right now, is that you've guys who get like now, I'll just say this thing first, right? In my opinion, there's never been a better, easier time to make it, because everybody's going in on a level playing field with technology, with the social media era, with being able to go in and buy a laptop for 200 quid and make unbelievable music on it. There's never been a more easier and level playing field for anybody to go in to any career. So there's no excuse for anybody now, in my opinion, right? But what's happening is that younger ones are getting a false sense of reality now, where if a tune blows up on TikTok, they think they've made it. That's not necessary, because there's a difference between a tune blowing up on TikTok and selling tickets at a venue. Somebody books you and you go and play, and two people turn up and say, but I had like 1 million views on TikTok. Why am I only selling 2 tickets? Because nobody knows who you are in America or any of these places. Do you know what I mean? It's like building up a fan base takes time, right? So my advice to someone is ignore all the noise on TikTok. Don't even do any of that. Promote yourself amongst the DJs. Build up your name and stuff. And if a tune's good, the internet and all the rest will take care of itself. But don't be under the false illusion because you're getting like a viral tune on TikTok that's going to make you. You need to like be completely grounded. I really think of the TikTok and stuff like that, although it is good and seeing that you're on the right path, it's giving young guys a real false sense of security. I've seen guys, this is no joke, a tune is blew up on TikTok, a major record label deal has come in for them, give them 20 grand for a tune, and they say, right, where's the follow-up? They can't even make it because they haven't got it in their locker to do it.
One hit wonder. Do
you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, do I blame them? Because if I was in that position when I started, I'd grab the money too. No, I don't.
100%.
But I'm just giving advice from somebody who's involved in the industry and knows how the back end of it works. It's not that easy, you know.
Do you think it's also a lot of pressure? Because like you're in the game a long time and you've made countless tracks. You've probably made 100 tracks nobody's ever heard it, never even heard the light of day.
Sure, yeah. There's probably 50 on my hard drive right now that nobody's heard, that'll probably never see the light of day.
Do you think someone blowing up on TikTok and a record label giving them 20 grand to make a follow-up and them not having done all that time is the issue? That they're just through into the deep end and then expected to make a second track whenever they haven't done years of experience of making tracks? No,
I just think that it's these youngsters are a victim of the era we're living in and a victim of how things are social media wise, giving you that false sense of like how things are. I just think you need to be grounded, and I know it's easier for me to say when I come from a grounded background, but that's the whole part of taking advice, you know. Like listening to someone who I'm probably one of the only DJs around here especially, but in a small circle there's maybe a handful of us that have lived in both eras, that have had records released and been coming up without social media, but also had to adapt and live in the social media world, which I find very awkward for me and tough to deal with because I'm not that sort of person. I'm kind of like, I don't like putting myself online. I'm not that sort of way, but you find a way, you know what I mean? You find a way to like make it work for you. And the way I do it is just be myself, just be like, make my social media as an extension of my personality.
What would you change about the industry if you could? Would it be social media?
How DJs were paid, or how probably I would get rid of Spotify at how it's making millions and billions of pounds from people, but the artists aren't getting paid, you know. Like even bigger artists now are starting to speak out about it.
Yeah.
Like Snoop Dogg there recently spoke out that he received a royalty check for a couple of 100,000, and his track had like 3 billion streams. 3 billion, like it's, you know, that is just ridiculous. Like it's just the thing that people has to remember is that DJs, producers and artists rely on this money so they can create their art, and if they're not getting fairly treated and paid for what they're doing, they're just not going to do it anymore because they have no choice. That's how it is, you know.
No, good answer. Because I actually heard Spotify recently are bringing out an additional plan, which it may be like a $5 extra a month, but the money goes towards further royalties. So it's kind of like, oh, you'll pay us 15 quid a month for the use of Spotify.
Yeah.
But if you want us to pay the artist you're listening to more, pay us an extra favour.
Oh, but the artist won't see it because the record label will get it.
We'll get it.
They'll get it, and the artist will get a small percentage of it, and it always has to filter through like 2-3 different things before the artist sees anything. It's this, the artists are always the last to get anything. So everybody takes their wee slice and percentage, and you're given like a small slice. Because when you sign a track to a record label, they own it. You don't own it anymore. You're just the name on it.
Yeah.
You're getting a percentage, but they own the rights to that music, so they can do whatever they want with it. Like,
So they can sell that to whoever.
they can sell that on, yeah.
And do you get a percent? So do you get a percentage of whatever they make off it?
The way it works is that you're signing a track to them, so they own the rights to that music.
Right.
So what they do with it is entirely up to them. But from each sale, no matter who owns it, you get a certain percentage. That's called a royalty.
Right.
So you're getting a royalty whether it's sold for £3 a unit or 20p a unit. You're getting 50% of that. So it is entirely up to them how they want to distribute it. But Spotify, you can be sure that in the contract that you have signed in the small print somewhere, if Spotify change their rules, they're going to adopt the suit, and you're signing something that's going to, like, you're going to get shafted no matter what. Like,
So do you think, can you see Spotify becoming a record label at some point?
no, I think like DJs need to take back ownership of their music, Bandcamp and things like that. Like, you know, I sell physical copies on Bandcamp, and that needs to be the way, you know, like you go on to Bandcamp and you say I put a tune up there, and say my album, for example, it's like €10, whatever, I'm getting that €10.
Yeah.
If someone buys it, I'm paying Bandcamp a very small fee, and I'm getting that money in my pocket. I don't think people realise how much or how little, artists get from actual their own music. It's very, very little. And those big major labels, they're worse. Like, they're just skinning people left, right and centre.
Aye, so if you really want to support an artist, listening on Spotify or Apple Music or even YouTube probably isn't the way.
There is no way really now. That's the thing, because like when you sign a track to like a big major label, how they distribute it is completely up to them.
Yeah.
So you don't really have any say in it. And being an up and coming artist, you need to be on those big labels to see yourself to be successful. So it's a double-edged sword. So while I say DJs and producers and artists need to take back control and ownership of music, it's easier said than done. It needs to be people need to stand together. It needs to be a collective. But the big ones at the top need to start first. They need to like set the standard, and then it usually filters down and follows after that.
Because they have the power, really.
It is happening. Like, people speaking out about it now, and I think people's just at the end of the road with it. And I think now with you know, the likes of TikTok and stuff actually taking shares from music and all now too, it's just getting crazy. So people are starting to take back ownership and self-release. How's it going to be in 5 years? I don't know, but something needs to change.
Yeah. Well, I've talked a wee bit about negative stuff about the industry, but anybody looking to be a DJ, it is a quite enjoyable journey. So we'll bring it back to some more like lighthearted stuff. What's your most like enjoyable period or memorable moments from your journey?
Look, I love everything that I do. I can't sit in here and talk negative. Like, all the chat we've had is more like back end stuff and business stuff, and there's always going to be unhappiness when money's involved and all that sort of stuff. It's you know, it's how it is, and whatever
it's how it is in every industry, really.
Everything, like, somebody's out to take something from you and you think you should be getting more, there's going to be a gripe there, and there's going to be a sort of annoyance. But on the other side of the coin, I've travelled the world. I've seen like so many different countries. I've brought my family with me. I've travelled, like, there's places I've been, crazy islands I've seen, been playing at like wee island called Borneo. I played there. I've been like everywhere, met so many amazing people, so many people along the way, promoters, loads of class friends, and you know, I get up every day, I go to the gym, come home, and I get to work from home and walk into my studio, which is like 20-second walk from my house, and spend the day in there, getting up and doing what I love every day, and I'm running my own record label. Like, I love my job, I love what I do, I have a serious passion for what I do. On the other side of the coin, passion can bring like frustration, but I wouldn't have it any other way. If someone said to me tomorrow, it's all gone, I'd be the most unhappiest person going. Like, you know, I've been so driven to get to this point, and I think I'm really in my peak now in terms of my DJing skills, my music. Just I feel like it's getting better every year. I can walk into the studio now, I can take something that I have in my head, I can sit down, I can write it. You know what the funny thing is? I can't read any sheet music, I can't play the piano, can't do anything like that. I just know what's good in my head and I write it on the screen, that's it.
So if you can't play the piano, am I wrong, but whenever you're making a beat, do you not have to like take the beats from a piano?
No, that's just triggering like a sample.
Right.
So I know basic chords, like very basic, but if you said to me, sit down and play, for example, that Stay remix, I couldn't do it. Like,
no.
I just can move stuff around. I know what I want in my head. And you know what? That way of thinking has led me to, like, you know, writing some of the best, most obscure music that I've ever written, because you're not sitting down with that theory and restriction in your head. You're like, anything goes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And sometimes bending the rules is where the magic happens. There's times that I've like said, that doesn't really sound right, but yet it sounds good, like, you know what I mean? I just left it there. And, you know, like I said, some of the most tactically gifted piano players that I know could not write a tune like I could write. They couldn't do it because they're not a DJ, you understand? So I have the knowledge of knowing what works on a dance floor, but also knowing what I want as a producer. It maybe takes me a wee while longer to get there because I don't have the theory. But writing good music is not about being classically trained or about being...
But then like you said, you have your own method, and if the method works, it works.
That's it. Like, there's no rules in this game. Like, you know, like I said to you before, I know loads of people who are amazing musicians, can play like guitar, can play pianos and all. They couldn't write a track, like. No. They just could not do it. What's
the most weird or random gig you've ever done?
Oh man, I've been through some crazy times. Well, believe me, I'll tell you a few stories.
Right,
like,
let's go. We want a few stories.
I can remember playing in Egypt in Cairo. This was when I first started out, and I was the DJ agency that I was signed to. There was another big DJ who is now, like, at that time he was just up and coming. His name's Umid Oskin, but he is now like a massive DJ. Like, he's in the DJ mag and all. He's like way in the stratosphere. He's massive. He's actually Dutch, and we went to play in Egypt and Cairo, and the way it works over there, it's very corrupt and very, like, everything's, you know, you have to pay the government off, and it's all like everything's very on the brown envelope under the table, carry on, like, you know, right? So we went anyway, and I don't know, man. Apparently the way it worked was that the club owners, you're supposed to buy some sort of license from the government to run an event, and they didn't do it. Anyway, I was standing and Umid Oskin was playing. I was sitting behind him on the decks. They were giving me grapes, pouring me drinks, and I was living my best life, man. I was just like, you know, drinking away, thinking this was great. And next thing I heard, this big massive bang. Police came running in. I was sitting on a chair like this, right, eating grapes. They lifted the chair on each end and carried me out on the chair, right. Umid Oskin, they lifted the mixer. His headphones was plugged in it, and I just pulled his neck like that there, and he just went flying onto the dance floor. They dragged him, and then the headphones was around his neck, and they were just like dragging him. And I was going, this is like, I thought it was some sort of comedy show setup thing or something. Anyway, we ended up spending the night in the cells in Cairo. And we were trying to explain to everybody what was going on, and they were like telling us, you know, like all this sort of stuff. We got out anyway. We never seen the promoters again. They never picked us up to leave us to the airport or anything. We were just put onto the street. He booked a flight home. My flight wasn't the next day, and I went back to the hotel, and they said that they hadn't paid for the hotel, the promoters or nothing. I had to actually pay for the hotel as well. The gig actually cost me money. So yeah, man, I've been through some crazy situations, believe me, and like DJing, especially in the older days, whenever you're up and coming and you're taking gigs that aren't with really like, you know, credible promoters, but you need to take them because you need to look busy to get those bigger gigs. Some crazy times. Like I've played the dance floors with maybe one or two people standing, looking at you, going, "Who the hell is this guy?" And you're like trying to act like Eddie Halliwell playing the decks and trying to be cool. And you know that's happened to me a lot over my career, playing the empty dance floors and people not knowing who you are. And yeah, it's crazy times.
I was near crying there just the thought of you coming out the chair being lifted out.
The chair and me eating grapes. Vodka and Red Bull in one hand and a bunch of grapes on my lap. Like
I don't know why, but I just got the picture. Do you know those old like Egyptian films where like they're carrying the pharaoh?
That's what it was like.
Grapes.
And I was just like, I didn't even know what was going on here. Honest to God.
Oh. What's it? Well, I've not a couple of questions, but I don't know if you'll have anything crazier than that. What is the most random or funny or crazy thing that you've seen happen in a crowd whenever you've been DJing?
Oh, I've seen. Do you know what? Like most of the time when you're playing, it's hard to see the crowd because you're sort of like the lights are shining on you, so you're kind of like blinded a wee bit. You know, and it's kind of like at the bigger events, like transmission, all the crowds like wee dots. You can hardly see anything at all. So you're kind of like disconnected from the crowd in most places. But back in the older days, like, oh my God, man, it was just like wild. You know, scenes. You know, people throwing things at you was probably the worst thing coming from the crowd. Like, I can remember playing a gig where a guy, they have this thing in Australia where you drink beer from a shoe. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So you take people taking their shoe off in the crowd, and they'll throw it up into the booth, and you fill it full of beer and drink it, and people go wild. That's probably the wildest thing I've seen, but maybe it's not so wild when you get the shoe and you look at it and the insole's absolutely black and you're like, you're all, if I don't drink this I'm going to look like a lightweight, and you're like, you know. So it's kind of like,
I should have been through the worst.
I'd say the crowd isn't as bad behind the stage in the wee back rooms and the blue rooms or green rooms, whatever they call it. That's where the real carry on goes on.
Well, that was my next question. I want to hear stories about back there, because this is the part that like the normal person doesn't get to experience.
Yeah.
So what about the backstage?
Always full of like girls who are leeches, trying to get things like for free, drinks for free, always full of leeches. But I always wind them up. I can remember a time in Australia, me and my friend Sid Van Rail, there was girls came backstage and we could see them. They were drinking everybody's drinks, and as a DJ you always get like a rider, which is, you know, mine's always like a bottle of vodka, you know, like 6 beer, whatever else, you know, like you have it on, and you get that every gig. But you'll get groupies coming back and they'll wait till you like go to the toilet or something, they'll fill their glasses or whatever. And there's these girls that were sitting there, and anyway, I took the bottle of vodka and hid it behind the microwave and filled it full of water, and they were drinking the whole night water, and at the end of the night they were blocking all as all girls have a good night, oh we're steaming. I goes, I don't know how he's drinking water all night. And I goes, taste it, and they just all looked at each other. I got there, they're drinking the water from the vodka bottle the whole night.
They've had the time of their lives.
Yeah.
Have you gigged in any other random? I actually want to ask that question again because the first story was so good. Have you gigged in any other random or weird places?
Random places.
Or is that the weirdest?
Island, Borneo I played in, which me and Brian Kearney played, Lisa Lashes, and it was crazy, man. Like, we were going down to the gig and it was just like going through a forest with like people living in a forest with no shoes and all on. It was like mad. It was like, did you ever see the island of Borneo where they have like the monkeys and all? It's like a real proper, like real weird place to be playing. We played this festival. Man, there's just like elephants on the streets and all. It was just really, really like weird for us, but like incredible to see also. Seen some like amazing countries like over the years, like, you know, Mexico, Argentina, Australia.
Do you have a favourite?
Argentina for sure. Argentina is my favourite.
What's it about Argentina?
I just love it over there. The people are so passionate. You can be a proper DJ over there. Take people on a journey. They're real open minded. I've been playing there every year for, I would say, the last maybe 12, 13 years probably, in and around that. A promoter that takes me over there, Javier Basolo, have become like very good friends. You know, I go to his house for barbecues and all of them over there. The football is always on, the big rivalry, Boca Juniors and River Plate. When you go over there, is a big, whenever those two are playing, you go to the matches and stuff. It's just incredible. I just love everything about Argentina. The food, the people, the passion for football. Yeah, love it.
What does success sound like to you? Or what is success to you, if you had to define it for yourself?
Success to me is doing something every day that you love and be able to provide for your family. That's the two core things that matter to me the most. And being able to do those two things, I believe that everything else will just take care of itself. So that's what I'm striving for every day. But in order to maintain that success, you still have to be on point. So it's an easy word to say, but what takes to get to that point and maintain it, there's a lot of things under it, but they're the main core.
I think that's something everybody who is driving for something is success, or is. I think that's something that everybody's striving for success with, like struggles with, which is that work-life balance. So for yours, you want to be successful in your field, but you also want to provide for your family, have time with your family.
Yeah.
Have you found that balance hard, or have you got to the point now where it's easy?
Yes and no. Like I think in the early days when I was making music, but still, like I'm still learning now, but I was learning more back then, and it was taking me so long to make tracks, so I was having to spend longer in the studio to make something, you know, to keep that consistency up. That was kind of like where the real struggle was, with the lower gigs, the lower fees, and having to spend all the time in the studio to maybe take me 6 months to make one track. But now that I have like a balance in my life right now where I can make music pretty quick, I only spend like maybe 3-4 hours a day in the studio these days. Like that's my day. I quit drinking probably 2 years ago now, a year and a half now. I've had like a couple of drinks or Christmas or whatever, but in terms of drinking, I don't really do it anymore. I'm just like into my training now, looking after myself. So the first 2 hours of my day is gym and, you know, cardio, and that's how striking that balance of health and fitness and work has really helped me over the last year and a half. Whereas, you know, I've always trained on and off for years, but I never really had like a proper plan. Now that I've implemented that, I feel like I have a really good balance of, like, you know, I think your health is very important to being driven as well, because if you're tired all the time and you haven't got it in the tank, or you're like, you know, you're just not feeling on point, it can be hard to have that drive. I think it's like you have to be a well-oiled machine as such, like, you know, like a car. And I feel that where I'm at right now in my life, I feel like that. Like I feel like I have the technical ability to make music as fast and with the quality that I want, and I'm also very fit as well in terms of my physical health and stuff. Is
that something you wish you realised sooner, or have you always kept yourself fit?
Yeah, look, I done like most of my partying when I was younger. I would say when I met my wife, I was 26, and I kind of like reeled it in from then. And then when I started my journey in music, the going out the weekends and the drinking kind of took a back seat. Of course, like I like a night out with mates just to get leery and, like, you know, just let it go and let it loose. Yeah. Everybody does, but those nights became like few and far between because my priorities had shifted and I wanted something else more. I didn't fancy the 3-day hangovers where I was like thinking to myself, well, if I'm laying in bed hungover, I could be doing this. Do you know what I mean? Something else took over. And I think finding that thing that overtakes that is like sort of like a big thing in any young person's life, where they have something to direct focus, that they realise, do you know what, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be losing out on that. And I think it's easier said than done. Like some people go through their whole life and they might have a passion and they just don't discover it. Yeah.
You mentioned like drinking there and partying and stuff. Obviously the industry you're in with festivals and gigs, like drink and drugs is a big part of it. Have you ever found an issue with it at gigs? I mean, as in me personally, as in like taking stuff myself, or like no, not
with
you,
other people?
But with other people.
Look,
you don't need to say names, obviously, but I've said
no. Look, loads of it's pretty obvious that the music scene and the club scene is rampant with like drugs and drink, like it has been since the start of time. But like for me, it's always going to happen. Like I'm not going to judge someone like for being on something or whatever. It's
no, I'm not saying that. It's more like you would hear horror stories sometimes of something happening. Has that ever happened to one of your gigs?
I've never seen anybody like go too crazy and been took away in an ambulance or anything. I've never, like, see, to be honest, I don't hang about. Like, if I'm backstage, I have a group of people that I know that I can be myself around.
Yeah.
And if I want to have a few drinks with, like, I have a friend, Sid Van Rail from Amsterdam. He was pretty prolific. He was started touring around the time Tiesto. He was kind of like in with Tiesto and all. And his manager took me on as well at the same time. So my ex-manager was also Tiesto's manager. So I was kind of like met Sid through him. Dimitri, he's passed away now. And me and Sid have became good friends. Sid's now no longer really active in the music scene. He's doing his own thing. He lives in Holland. But we meet up once a year at Luminosity Beach Festival. That's where I play near enough every year. And I know that I can be myself around him. We can have, like, I can get a few drinks and, like, you know, get tipsy or get drunk, whatever, and have a bit of crack. Can be myself. There'll be no stories carried. There'll be no nonsense. Can just be ourselves and have a bit of crack. I just keep my circle very small. But now that I'm not drinking so much, I didn't give up drink completely. I just have, like, selective nights, you know, like that. And maybe Christmas time will be the only time I'll have a few. But, you know, most of the DJs I associate with, we're all very career driven. We'll go down, we'll have a few drinks to relax sometimes or not. And then we'll play our set and then we'll just split. Good. Don't really hang around.
Who's the most famous person you've ever met? And what would they like?
Who is the most famous person I've ever met? Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley.
He's a bald head actor. He was in, did you ever see that movie, Sexy Beast? You ever seen it? No?
I think I can picture him. I think I know.
It's an amazing film. Like,
if it's the person I'm thinking about, I know who he is.
I met him in Belfast Airport. As soon as you Google him and you see his face, you'll go, I can't believe it.
I can see his head.
Yeah, I think he was in, was he in Game of Thrones maybe as well? I'm not sure. Anyway, I met him in Belfast Airport, going to a gig and started chatting away at him. I was chatting to him for like an hour. The most humble person I've ever met. Like, we just was talking about music and all, and I was telling him, you know, about my journey and all, and he was like, he was telling me it was a similar like journey that he was on as an actor. Like, he'd be in his 60s now, you know what I mean? Yeah. But Paris Hilton, met her too backstage in Space. I suppose, like, she's famous. But mainly DJs would be, I suppose, like, the clique I'd be in, but Carl Cox is obviously the most famous DJ. I've never met like Tiesto or anyone, because I play trance, we're not kind of mixed in with that. Main stage, Armin, probably the biggest in trance, like, you know,
what was Paris Hilton like? Were you talking to her?
An idiot. Complete idiot. She was backstage at Space in Ibiza, and she was completely blocked, like falling about. And just like my ex-manager, Dimitri, who was Tiesto's manager, was there, and he introduced us, we shook hands, and she just like said hello with one eye open, and I just went to her, right? And that was it. And then away on she went, stumbled on. She was just blocked. She was just a typical, like, you know, backstage drunkard idiot. Like,
that's exactly the image that I pictured as her, just from back in the day when
she
heard
didn't
stories about her.
that way. Like, she was just like, the stereotype lived up there.
Who do you look up to?
In terms of music and like,
if you have a like business, a career, who you look up to, and if you also have a personal one, do them both.
A lot of people actually, for different things. Like, you know, I take inspiration from different people. I'll name a few and I'll tell you why I look up to them. I suppose a few odd ones probably, like, well, Dr. Dre, number one, because of the music obviously, and about how he's taken his career, the technical aspect, and also how he discovered Eminem, and he had a lot of people tell him, you know, stay away from him, this white guy, he'll never make it in rap, and how he betted everything on something that he believed in. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for that, do you know what I mean? Especially in the industry that he's in. You can only imagine, like, you know,
back then too.
Yeah, like it was a big punt that he took, and you know, that's self-belief, and that's like believing in yourself. Sylvester Stallone's another one. Like
that's a random one.
That's the random one.
Right. Well, why is that?
Just I don't know if anybody knows the whole story about Rockies and all, about how he sold his dog and all, and like, you know, financed that and wouldn't had all these studios turned down unless he got to play Rocky in the film.
Yes, I remember that actually.
And he actually turned down so many offers from studios to get the right one because he knew that would be his big break. And just how he carries himself, you know, I've watched like interviews and even to this day talking about his career. I just think he's a very, you know, he believes himself, a lot of self-respect, and you know, he doesn't take no for an answer, that kind of like character. And like, he's not the best actor, let's face it, you know what I mean?
No, he's not.
But like, in terms of how far he's got and what he's done and all those franchises he created and all, like, you have to take your hat off to him, you know what I mean?
100%.
Dorian Yates is another one. He might be in the fitness realm, but just the way I listen to his podcasts and how he talks and about, you know, I guess like I gravitate towards people who have like amazing self-belief. People who are like black and white, you know what I mean? There's no nonsense with them. It's just like, this is how I think it should be, and if you're telling me it's not like that, I'm not going to listen to you. This is how I think it is. So they would be my main like inspirations in terms of work ethic and stuff like that.
You've given me three very unique answers that I didn't think you would give me. Whenever I wrote that question down to ask you, I thought it would be someone in your industry that is like maybe further on their career than you, but you've give like you surprised me with them answers, but you had a good reason for every one of them.
I'm not inspired by anybody in trance, because at the end of the day, like I said, trance is very subjective and everybody's path and what they're on. I suppose like I have no connection to Sylvester Stallone or Dorian Yates, but I guess like those guys, like Sylvester Stallone, for example, you grow up like watching all these things and like seeing all these things, and you can relate to them in a more way. And like the whole Rambo First Blood's my best film of all time. It's my favourite film of all time. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. I just love the story behind it.
He murders about 10,000 people.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like, but if you look at the actual story behind that movie, it's creating awareness for Vietnam vets. That's what it's about. How they were all taken home and just basically left to their own device. Like the system let them down, used them and let them down. That's the whole, you know, message behind that movie. And I always feel that any movies that he created, there was always like a really solid message behind them that I could always like resonate with. I kind of feel like that's why he inspired me in a way.
Do you think, because like obviously I watched those films, like watched Rocky when I was younger, and I watched Rambo and all too. I never got that meaning from Rocky or Rambo.
You never got that what? Sorry,
I never got that meaning from Rambo.
Yeah.
Right. Because I just watched it, and it was at the time I was a kid, and it was just a really over the top action film.
Yeah.
And it was one of his over the top, like that's what his style was. Same as Arnold Schwarzenegger, just over the top action.
Yeah.
Do you think because of how you listen to music, it makes you dissect other things in the artistic world?
Yeah, well, I would have been similar to yourself when I watched those movies at that time. I was absorbing them, and I'd probably seen it exactly the way you seen it.
Yeah.
And like the way I stumbled across that First Blood movie, for example, was that my dad used to take me to video shop on a Friday night, and he would rent a movie for himself and one for me. But when he used to go to work, I used to watch his movie, so he wouldn't let me because it was obviously too old for me.
Yeah.
So I used to be watching horror films and all back then, and like all this stuff, and just like, you know, living my best life, whatever. So I would have been watching anything, and like you watching that, would have just seen an action film. It was only later on in life when I started to actually make music and started to dissect things, and that's way of thinking started to enter my life when I became like about 13, 14. That's when the appreciation for things came, because I was seeing things and watching things in a completely different way. And I don't know if everybody's like that, or it's just me, or maybe it's something weird about me. I don't know, but it's just how I see things and listen to things.
Do you do everything? So would you do it with like obviously poetry or rap and stuff? But if you seen like a painting, would you do
everything?
Everything.
I actually think I've got a problem. Like, do you know what? Our washing machine broke yesterday.
Right.
I was on YouTube last night at 11 o'clock watching how to take a washing machine apart and see how the workings of it, and to see if I could fix it myself. Maybe a bit like, even though I knew I was going to buy a new one, I was still interested to see how it was done. You know what I mean? And like, I bought a new one this morning, but I'm still watching the videos to see. I'm a bit nitty like that in a way, and I don't know if it's like
see now you have
a
a new
problem
one.
I have, like, or something. But
see now you have a new one. Are you going to pull the old one apart?
I've kept it in the garage. It'll be opened, like 100%. It will be opened at some stage, like.
Have you had one track that popped off for you and kind of changed the trajectory of your life, or changed the trajectory of your style?
My style changes every year, and I'll tell you why. Because, like I said before, having any sort of longevity in this game is about staying current, but also staying true to your style. So you're having to tweak your sound slightly to stay what's current. I started an alias there called Alt1, which is more like giving me that loose freedom to make music that was inspired by hip hop and like different styles like that. So I've kind of have that now to sort of have like some sort of freedom creatively, and that's on the side. That's a wee side project. But in terms of my own Sneijder brand, making music and staying current, it changes every year. But my ethos in music is always about the melody. Keeping that energy going. My music's always very energetic. I don't think you'll ever listen to one track that I've made that hasn't been very driven and energy driven. So I would say that's the main ingredient that has to be there. The melody has to be strong. And if you're going to ask me if there's one track that I feel like was like a crossroads in my career, is that the question you probably want to ask? Like, that I think sort of completely changed my direction where I was going. Yeah. Would have been a remix I done for Andean, What It's Like it was called, and John O'Callaghan set that remix up for me. He sort of like brung that to fruition whenever I was signed to his agents, his friend's agency, Rob Murphy. So John sorted that out for me, and I got all these amazing parts of this record, so I just had to add my sound to it, and everybody played it. Like Armin was playing it, all his live sets, Ali and Fila, John. And I think that track sort of like brought a lot of attention around my name in the industry after that. I'd say, that was the track that...
How was it?
Yeah.
What about, obviously like DJing, you probably started off with just like beats. Well, what about vocals? So like, can you remember the first time you got vocals on a track?
That was probably the first one that I worked with in terms of proper good vocals. And it was really tough because working with vocals is really hard. Like, well, not now, obviously I could work with them no problem, but back then timing of vocals, processing of vocals was really tough. Although that remix, the vocals were already processed, so I just got like stems and I just had to drop them into that project. But now, I'm very fussy about lyrics. I'm actually writing a new vocal track at the minute. It takes me so long to write a vocal record because I'm very, very fussy about the lyrics. I just don't throw anything in there. Everything has to be on point. Yeah,
that's something I was actually curious about, was whenever you're, like, so obviously you're the DJ, so do you write the vocals or do you bring a vocalist on who writes vocals for a track you've made?
Each one's different. Like, some vocalists are good at singing, but they're not good songwriters. Right. You have some good songwriters who aren't good vocalists. So you kind of like bring in a team. You can have like, it's rare to find a vocalist who can write lyrics as well. Sometimes I write them and give them to someone, they'll tweak them a bit and sing them and like make them better. Sometimes you'll have a songwriter who'll write lyrics on it and they'll get someone to sing it. So it's kind of like, sometimes there's 2 people involved, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. It just depends on the track and how it turns out. Sometimes I've had tracks that has been a male vocal and I've decided halfway through it, do you know what, this would sound better of a female, and I get someone to re-sing it, female. So it's all about the journey of the track and how things progress along the way. It's like, it's just twists and turns happen in making music, and that's just how it is.
I have only 2 more questions for you, and one of them is, which I think I already know the answer to, are you happy?
At this moment in time, very. I mean, my career's going amazing. Just signed with an amazing new agency there about 1.5 years ago, working with an incredible team there. Just about to announce, I don't know when this podcast's going out, but I'm announcing in a couple of days another agency we're working in partnership with. So we'll have 2 people, working with 2 agencies now, and You know, I'm playing like the biggest and best festivals in my genre in the world. I'm like, have a comfortable life, happy marriage, beautiful daughter, beautiful wife, all that, and waking up every day, doing what I love, and I'm looking after myself. I don't think I've been in a better place in my life, to be honest. So I've peaked at the minute. I think like long may it continue. Touch wood.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
And last question that we're going to end on. What is the best bit of advice that you have ever received, and either pass it on to viewers today listening, or if you have something that's more modern or for yourself you want to pass on? So best bit of advice you've ever received, and either end on that, or if you have something else you would like to add to it.
Well, I can put the two together. The best bit of advice that I received is something that I would pass on to other people, and it's simple. Just keep it real. Be yourself. Of course, it depends what industry you're in, but I'm only speaking from the music industry here. Be yourself, be organic. The rest will take care of itself. People like to invest in a person just as much as a product. You're investing in someone, an agency comes along, they're gonna be looking to see what you're like to work with as a person, as well as your music. They both work hand in hand. If you're an absolute plum, you're going to be hard to work with and hard to manage. They're not going to touch you, no matter how good your music is. So you need to be a decent person, maintain credibility, just don't be an asshole, do you know what I mean? Like, just be yourself. You can still be passionate, like we spoke about earlier. You can still be driven, and you can still be like all of those things, and be yourself, and just be respectful. And that's how I've always carried my career on through. I would never rip anybody off. I would never expect anybody to do anything for me that I wouldn't do for them. You know, it's kind of like how I've carried my life in all parts of my life, not just music. And I would say that's it. Just keep it real. Keep it real.
Andrew, thanks very much for coming on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Some great stories, great advice. Even just me learning the background of your life. It's been very interesting. We're going to plug some of your social medias. And so if you want to find Andrew, I'm going to have to spell this name because I'm half dyslexic as it is. Never mind trying to spell Sneijder.
Yeah.
So it is Sneijder. So Sneijder Music on Instagram. You're also on SoundCloud. You're also on
Sneijder Music on everything. Sneijder Music on Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud,
TikTok.
Actually, maybe just Sneijder on SoundCloud. Sneijder Music on TikTok. So yeah, that's basically all the main ones.
And if somebody wants to go and support you, where can they do that? Where's your tracks?
Yeah, you can get my tracks on, like, if you want to buy them, if you want to buy the physical copies, Beatport, or if you want to buy my album, which is released, the vinyl, you can go onto Bandcamp, Sneijder on Bandcamp. Or if you just want to stream my music, Apple Music, Spotify, all your usual portals, everything will be on there.
Perfect. Well, once again, thanks for having you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.